pretty quickly, and the ones that stay just have no other choice. So we've built a team of people that are in that situation, and it doesn't provide great care, great service, or a fun place to work. And so you're exactly right. Everybody has to make a big shift. And yes, sometimes leaders have to go first and have the most faith and be the most consistent in order for others not to think, oh, this is just watch them for a couple of weeks and they'll quit all this stuff and they'll be different and maybe they'll fire that guy and we won't have to do all this. But if they commit to it, it's amazing how quickly people start to say, okay, this is the new thing. I got to figure out how I fit in here and what I want to do different and what I need to work on. And that's where people get, but it's not immediate.
This is great. It's like when you watch ice skating and you think, they made it look so easy. I'm totally going to be able to do it. Right. You're like that for leadership.
I appreciate that. My whole goal is to take it from this sort of vague, indescribable art form, or what I feel like might be right because of what somebody did for me years ago, and turn it into a set of processes and tools and resources and steps that people actually can execute. And that doesn't make it easy to do. It does make it simple enough to think about differently. And that's the first step, right? Because if I can conceive that it's possible, I'll start working on it. If I start thinking about something like culture change, holy cow, that's like nebulous and crazy and hard and will take forever. And I got a patient to see. So I'll worry about that later, and that's all we're trying to do is put it in a different space.
Oh, that's great. And one last question for you. On the Aspire, you have multiple courses, and I know you're continuing to add more. Is there a recommended order when you're going through them, or is it really pick and choose?
It's a great question. We've tried to sort of put courses out so that people that are immediately struggling with certain challenges can go there and find some help and some support. And yet, to your point, there are also foundational courses that things can build on. So if I had to pick two, especially for leaders, the first one would be managing your business, leading your team. And in that course, we separate the difference between management and leadership because they're two different things. In the veterinary profession, we use the words, I'm going to manage this team of people. It's completely incorrect in terms of what we really need to do to be successful. You don't manage people. You lead people. You manage things. And so we break that apart and start to talk about, here are the things you do need to manage in your business. If you're leading a business, here's how you need to think about leadership differently. It's about culture. It's about talent. It's about engagement. It's about change. It's not about sort of resources and supplies and structure. And those are management things. You can do those alone, thinking about them. You can't do the other stuff alone. It's something you do with people, and there are skills associated with it that we try to teach. But understanding that foundational sort of approach to leadership is really important. And I guess the second one I would say is actually the course that we just released around building a fully engaged team. And it's a 3-part course, but it does start to break down why humans engage or disengage, how it is the single biggest factor in your hospital's success, or the amount of it, is the level of engagement of the employees. And so if we're not working on that as leaders, we're missing huge opportunity. We start to think about our job as leaders to get compliance, right? Get people to do the things we want them to do. And that's completely incorrect. It would be fine if they didn't need to solve challenging problems, communicate with each other, do things that actually require them to show up engaged. But they do. And so compliance isn't our issue. Engagement is our issue. Commitment to showing up and doing the right things at their best every day is really what we're going for. Sometimes we tend to settle for just do what I said. That would feel good, right? Yeah. I would call that a win. And again, we get trapped in that just don't be at our worst sort of space instead of what's our best look like and how do we move toward that? And maybe we never achieve it, but can we make progress every day? That's still a dramatically different set of outcomes than we would have gotten if we were just trying, to survive and get through the day and not lose anybody, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. And thank you so much for joining me. And it's been an honor. I was really excited. I started asking you questions right away before even introducing you.
It's been a pleasure for me. And I hope people will go to aspirevet.com and learn a little more. That's a 30-day free trial. So we want people to try this out and stay because it matters, not just, sign up. It really is about how do we help the profession and support it. And right now, this is our biggest and best tool to do it in a really broad way. So I hope more people begin to talk about it, think about leadership differently in the profession, and I hope we can help. And I've really enjoyed the opportunity to have a conversation with you and be here for it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I think I told you we'll interview them in a month, but I think it would make more sense it'll be like one of those long studies where if we check in quarterly, I think that would be kind of cool to see how positive or negative, how it transpires. Right. Plus, it keeps you honest.
That's exactly right. And we're looking for reality, not the stuff we hope will happen. Let's adapt based on what did. So that helps us. We continue to think of new ways to build these courses, new ways to support the profession. We want to add things like coaching and an app and things like that to Aspire as it grows. And so we've got plenty of ideas, but it does require that the profession starts to sort of engage and think about leadership differently in order for any of those to matter.
Yeah. Well, thank you again.
Cool.
As you can tell, it was hard for me to say goodbye. I just kept wanting to ask Randy more and more questions because he's just a wealth of knowledge. And I really do encourage everybody to check out Aspire. I had the pleasure of working with it for the last 3 months, and it's pretty awesome. I did quite a number of the courses, and I learned a lot. And I think leadership, like a lot of things, is practice makes perfect. But every time you do it or every time you learn a little bit more about it, it kind of reaffirms what you've been doing, and it reminds you of things that you told yourself that you're going to start doing going forward. And for me, one of the biggest takeaways is actually practicing before that stressful event happens. And that's honestly for home and for work, because if you have that game plan, then hopefully you won't have that knee-jerk reaction. Because unfortunately, I've decided that my default mood, I think, when something crazy happens is moderate irritation and disappointment. And it's not necessarily disappointment in anybody other than disappointed in my own reaction. So it's a very strange dichotomy of I get irritated and then I get irritated with myself for getting irritated. So I think for me, having an emergency plan or a stop the drama plan will be really helpful. And it has been at the time of me doing the kind of epilogue for the interview, it's been about a month to 6 weeks since we completed the Stop the Drama course. And I will say that I do think that it helped. I think that one of going through the course together was great, and doing the exercises was awkward but very helpful. And it's good, I think, to kind of acknowledge when people are everyone is a little nervous about talking in front of everybody else or kind of role playing, but I really do think that helped. And at the end of it, we all went around the room and listed something that we learned and or a takeaway that we gained from the course. And then I created a poster, a pledge, and I typed up everything that everybody said, that one takeaway that everybody had. And when we framed it, and we put it in the break room. And it is very helpful. I do actually look at it every day, and the staff looks at it every day. And I've had a couple of instances where we'll have conversations, me and another employee, or I'll overhear other employees talking, and they'll say something, and the other employee you can tell doesn't understand, or they get frustrated. And then there's this pause and this regroup. And sometimes people reference one of the sayings from the poster, and sometimes they just kind of, through hand gestures or facial expressions kind of acknowledge that we're getting off track, and they regroup. And so I do think it's helping us communicate. It's definitely a practice, just like medicine. You can never communicate too well. You can never communicate in the best way. You're always evolving in how you communicate. But I do think that it was an invaluable course. And again, I highly recommend everybody check it out. And I really want to thank Randy for participating in the podcast. And next up, we are going to hear 2 pet tales. We're going to hear about Jerry Lee and Brooke.
Jerry Lee is a German Shepherd about 3 years old and gorgeous. Yes, and yesterday morning I took him for his usual walk, and I took him off the leash just as we approached our gate, and he just scooted into the shrubs right near the gate and came out running into the backyard, and I thought, he has something. And I called him, and sure enough, he'd caught a bird. And he hadn't done anything to it yet, and I just said, out, drop it. He did, and came back to me, and the bird went off. So anyhow,
good job, sir.
Jerry Lee is great.
True gentleman. What was the other one that you told me last time?
The other one, I had Jerry Lee for about, I don't know, a couple of months. I got him when he was around a year old, and I was taking him out to our big park and letting him off the leash to run, and I go out before dawn in case, because I wasn't sure how he would listen to me yet, even though he'd been fully trained. And all of a sudden, one morning, he sees this jogger in the distance, and it's a big field away, and he runs over to the guy. Wasn't listening to me, so I stopped calling him and just was waiting to see what would happen when he encountered the jogger. So the jogger sees this German Shepherd coming at him in the pre-dawn, so he stopped moving, and Jerry Lee sat in front of the jogger and just looked at him. And finally the guy says, well, I guess I'll keep jogging. And Jerry Lee went jogging with him, and the man brought him back to me. The man was stunned. He couldn't believe it. He just sat there and looked at him. Let's go.
He says, what? Are you guys laughing at me?
No, we're just proud of you. So those are some of the sagas of Jerry Lee.
I like it.
Brookie used to play baseball with the boys, and they used her as one of the players. She'd be an outfielder, and they'd play with a tennis ball, and she would get down when the pitcher was ready to throw, and then she knew who could hit the ball and who couldn't. Like she
moved closer to Tom.
She would literally move closer. She knew like who was lefty, who was righty. She'd switch positions in the field, and then our pastor, we told him about it one time, and he used to come over and visit because our son had gotten sick, so he'd come visit our son. He and his son went and played, he called it dog ball. So, and he said he used her in his sermon one Sunday about how he played dog ball. But she was the best player. She would catch it, she would field it, and she was amazing. She knew exactly what to do. And that's our Brookie.
I like that you taunted the players.
She was great. And
was she like, hey, about her back?
Our youngest son, he wasn't as good because he was really young, so she was just like, sit down.
Aww.
And then Seneca would either just sit on the porch and like be the guard dog, or sit at the edge of the woods and just be the guard dog.
Ah.
She didn't play, but she would just guard.
Everybody needs a job, right?
Yeah.
I think that about wraps it up. As always, thank you for listening to this installment of Vetsplaining. I hope you enjoyed your time with me and ideally learned at least one new thing for the day. If you have any questions or suggestions for future topics, feel free to leave a comment below or email info@independenthillvet.com and put podcast topic or podcast comment in the subject line. Until next time.